All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rosemary Riel. I use she and her pronouns. My role is as Assistant Director for Academic Service Learning with Source. Thanks for carving out some time to learn a little bit more about our Source Service Scholar program. Hopefully, at the end of this info session, you'll feel confident about submitting an application to our program for the upcoming academic year. But before we begin, I always like to stop and pause for an acknowledgement that we humbly acknowledge that the Johns Hopkins University is located on the traditional and contemporary homelands of Indigenous people, and that our campus resides on unceded lands of the Piscataway and Susquehannock peoples. And if anyone is more interested in learning about our acknowledgements, feel free to look up onto our website as well. So this is our agenda together. We'll give you a little bit of an overview of Source, our center, our community engagement principles, intro to the program, overview of some of the specific projects that you'll be applying to or considering applying for, and the roles of the students and responsibilities, expectations, and a little bit more about the application process and some FAQs. So a little bit about Source. Our mission is really to link the Johns Hopkins University health professional schools with our Baltimore communities at large, really focused on mutually beneficial partnerships that promote health and social justice. And you'll see our 4 key values there: reciprocity, justice, service, and collaboration. And so Source has been around for almost 20 years now, began through the motivation of students in the public health school, really wanting to do work in and with community. And so really we've been able to gather support from across the 3 health professional schools to provide interprofessional opportunities to do that work in partnership with a network of organizations. And so how do we build partnerships and practice service learning? These are our principles. These principles were developed by a number of community engaged practitioners across the Hopkins campuses. And really, we're really infusing these partnerships principles into our partnerships, as well as the projects that you'll be learning more about. The last thing to note about Source is really our pillars for critical service learning. So our Source Service Scholar program, SSS program, is one of our service learning opportunities. And so the focus in developing these projects really focus on social change, building authentic relationships with our preceptors, our partners, and their clients, and a focus on redistribution of power. So what does that mean? It means that mutually beneficial, that sort of co-learning with our preceptors and clients. And so really challenging who's expert. They're expert in the community. You have expertise in the gifts and the assets that you bring. And we're really trying to create and co-design projects that benefit everyone. And to really value the multiple knowledges and experiences that are coming together through the partnership. All right, so I'm going to pause there. And now we're going to move in to more specifics about the Source Service Scholar program. So it's unique. Again, we're entering our 13th year because it's a long-term commitment. It's one of our programs that really challenges our health professional students to consider, do I have time to commit to a Baltimore-based organization for 150 hours of service? And so that's approximately 3 to 5 hours per week over the course of the academic year, which typically starts is September through May. You do receive a stipend of $1,750, and again, it requires maintaining a consistent presence. And so as a student, of course, going through your courses change, et cetera. So we're really looking for folks that have a deep commitment to service, Again, social change, building authentic relationships. So really start beginning to understand Baltimore through its organizations, through its residents and peoples. And again, focused on learning more about the power dynamics that are at play in our city. If you are a full-time student enrolled in public health and nursing and are medical students enrolled in years 1 through 4, you are eligible to apply. And then the other unique thing about the SSS program is that you will be a project manager. And so what does that mean? That means you'll lead a small team of students, so your peers, to actually implement the project. So it's very project focused. And again, along with focusing on the project, you'll also be receiving training and guidance from our source team. So alongside this, you'll really be attending, we will be hosting you all through our SSS Academy sessions, which are monthly. And so you'll be learning more about service learning theories, critical reflection practices, focused on interprofessional competencies, because we do engage across the medical, nursing, and public health schools. And of course, you'll be interacting with professionals in the organization, social workers, and other folks that aren't health professionals, health professions. So, and again, learning a little bit more, refining some project management, volunteer recruitment, and how we deliver and report on our outcomes of our projects. So that's just a quick snapshot. Again, the trainings are going to be delivered through our academy sessions. They are mandatory. So we're bringing you on board, and not just to do the projects, but to also build a community, to build a cohort with the fellow scholars. And then you'll also be assigned a staff member for continued one-on-one advising. So you'll also have access to us in addition to your community-based organization project preceptor. So I'm going to pause there. And some of that information should be familiar to many of you if you've looked at the project sheet. So before we listed the projects, we listed all of those expectations. And so hopefully a lot of that is familiar to you already. All right. And so now we'll go through, how did we come to these projects? Again, I mentioned that Source has a number of partners that we work closely with, and we have a call for projects for our Source Service Scholar program. And so the CBOs develop. So it's really community identified projects. They identify who the scope of work will be, who the primary preceptor will be, who will work with the scholar. And so this year, so that happened all in the spring. And so we have a total of 14 projects where we'll have 14 scholars in this upcoming academic year. So in the spring, we had 5 matches for 5 projects. And so in this round that you all are hoping to apply for, there are 9 projects listed. And again, the program isn't designed to bring students as interns, but as project managers. And so students will work on a specific project from start to finish. So what does that mean? So when we ask our collaborators, our community-based organizations, and our partners to propose a project scope, we give them this guidance around it's, even though they may need to call it an intern just because of their organization, they might refer to you as an intern. Really, it's really a project manager role that they're looking for. And so this is just a quick comparison of what the difference might be. So with an intern, it's sort of regular program management activities, general tasks. It may or may not involve a team of students, and that the role kind of morphs depending on what's going on, day to day, week to week. So it doesn't have an anchor of a project. So we really ask them to develop to propose a scope of work for a project that our Source Service Scholar can lead and have this to be able to mutually design this with the scholar. So you're really going to be designing the project. So they have an idea. This is a project that they would like our Source Service Scholar to lead. And then for you to collaborate with the preceptor and with the staff to then implement in a team aspect of it. So that's where this is really different. It's a collaborative project plan. So you can imagine this is why it's such a robust commitment, 150 hours. I will mention that the 150 hours does include the time that you spend in the academy sessions. So, it's both project time and program academy session time is folded into the 150 hours. All right. And so this is just the general topics. Again, when we have our call for proposals from our community-based organizations, these are the type of projects that we say that we would support. So, implementation of a health-related curriculum, so some health education pieces, maybe some community outreach, maybe they're looking to build sort of their stakeholder network or build different partnerships that they don't have. It could be advocacy as well. Program design or even program assessment. Maybe they have a long time program that they're looking to adapt, or maybe they might need some support with quality improvement of some of their projects or programs. And it could be service extension of their organization. So what does that mean? That means they might want to build out their volunteer program, and you would help them sort of create the infrastructure. So that's sort of organizational capacity building, and a lot of, could be health education focus as well, health policy, health advocacy. So those are just some examples that we try to share with our partners so that they can generate projects that will be meaningful for their respective organizations. And so these are the 9 projects, the organizations, plus the titles of their projects. So these were the projects that were proposed and approved, and you all have seen, again, if you've been able to link to the project, to the information sheet, you'll have a snapshot of the project scope of work. And so really, this is the project that you will be interviewing for. So and what that, and again, what that means is that you'll be identifying a couple of these projects that you'll apply for specifically in the application process. I do want to pause and make note of that ways to work towards social change. This is another piece that we really encourage our community-based organization partners to look at. And to kind of think about, you'll see community organizing, advocacy, and raising awareness. There's lots of different ways to work towards social change. And this is just one kind of map that we kind of utilize on the outside. It's just, the different kinds of work that our partners may do. And then the inside work, the inside circle is really our campus-based strategies. And so that's what our Source Service Scholar program aims, to be as well. So this is just another way to sort of frame our work to begin to come together on the program. All right. So this is just a quick list of what our preceptors are expected to do. You'll have 2 points of contact. They also have to do some preparation on their part to be a preceptor for the projects. We talk to them about having regular and frequent meetings. So this is how we build our communication systems, and also, establish some expectation setting. They provide the guidance to all of our scholars regarding the project. So they're a part of orienting you, and also as you begin to co-design and implement the project, towards the end, you will really be able to talk about what the sustainability plan is of the project with the organization. They complete a mid and a final evaluation. They will verify the scholars' hours, making sure that we're accountable to one another. And of course, flexibility is key. Lots of things happen on the ground with our partners. And so we ask them to remain flexible, as well as remain flexible with students. Things happen with students as well. And this again is a quick snapshot of the expectations for the service scholars. Again, all of these are listed in the information sheet that include the project descriptions as well. Again, attend all of the sessions, do the work for preparation with online modules and other assignments, reflection assignments and reading assignments throughout the course of the year, log your hours, recruit volunteers. Again, we are a resource to help you recruit. You aren't doing that alone. Again, this is a cohort model. So we meet in addition, we meet to work together to develop solutions and to share what we're experiencing at our individual project sites with our partners so that we can help one another. Again, you'll have advisors available to you throughout the year to help you troubleshoot as you're developing your relationships, feeling more confident in leading the projects that you've applied for. Again, you'll be meeting with your preceptors required to do mid and final evaluations. And again, that flexibility, it's the last on the list, but the flexibility piece is really, we can do that in a way throughout the entire year. All right, I'm going to pause there and see. I know that is a lot of information. You'll be getting these slides in addition to a recording. So hopefully folks feel a little reprieve there if you're taking notes. Feel free to enter any questions in the chat. I'll try to answer them as they're coming along. I think that's about it right now. Does anyone have any questions that they want to put on the chat or come offline to speak out to the group? Because if not, we'll charge ahead. All right, I don't see any questions. So I wonder, for the folks that are out in, for our participants today, who is familiar, if folks could give a thumbs up, who's familiar with Hopkins Engage? Are there any thumbs up with it? Okay, yep, a few people, one maybe. Two, a couple folks. Okay. And for those who are starting with us at Hopkins, if not, Hopkins Engage is the platform that we use and that our partners utilize to promote our events and activities. And so
sorry to interrupt, but we have one question in the chat.
Absolutely. Just to clarify, is the bulk of the work starting in September or June? So some of the bulk of the work begins in September. A part of our service learning framework is that you do preparation before you do any work. And so some of that begins in the summer, but active collaboration with the partners begins in earnest in September. And it can, you can start to have some communication in August as well. There's another question there I see. Course is a full-time 9-month course. Will it act as a constraint for me to complete 150 hours of the requirement? I don't believe so. As long as you're graduating in May, I think that shouldn't be a constraint because it is for full-time students. And so that yours is a 9-month program or that you have 9 months left in your program, I think that looks like it should work for you. Does that make sense? Hopefully will it act as a constraint for you to complete it? So that's a lot about time management and what other time commitments you would have. So not knowing which MHS program you're in, a lot of this is reflecting on how you might be able to integrate this time. Hey, are international students eligible for the program? If you're a full-time student enrolled, yes, and we'll get to more details about international students. We'll answer that. But yes, you are eligible if you're a full-time student. Is there a maximum amount of hours students are capped at working at a student job with Hopkins? Depends on the employment. Typically, I see for nursing and public health tends to be 20 hours. I know that for medical students, you actually need a waiver. Medical students are not allowed to have employment outside of their full-time enrollment, but they do for the purposes of our program. We alongside them submit a waiver because this is a substantial amount of time. Nadia, I'm not completely sure, but I feel like it's 20 hours. And this, yeah, is the stipend monthly or only at the end of the project? So the stipend is paid out twice, midterm after you've completed 75 hours, and a final payment after 150 hours are completed. So it is not monthly. It's two payments. All right, great questions. Any others at this point? Okay, if not, I'm gonna move ahead. And this might help fill out some of the gray areas. Particularly the question about, how do I balance the time to do 150 hours in addition to being maybe in a 9-month program? So the SSS hours can be used for academic credit. Particularly, we have experience with our Masters of Public Health students who can utilize these hours as part of their practicum requirement. So if you happen to be an MPH student, you can utilize the Source Service Scholar project for your practicum hours. We work closely with the practice office. But students, I will note that you still must register for a Source Practicum Special Studies credits for you to also utilize your hours as well. Students individually, even if you're not in the MPH, sometimes it's a capstone. For other students, you would work with your advisor. We would need to do kind of a crosswalk to see how the project could meet your academic requirements for a capstone, occasionally for a field experience or a field internship. Sometimes they're called different things in different courses as well. But you'd work closely with your advisor if you're thinking about using your hours. Sometimes capstones are deliverable driven. So, we could walk alongside with you and your preceptors if you're interested in proposing using the project for academic credit and making sure that the deliverables that they need might also work for your curricular needs. Additionally, some haven't been too many, but in the medical school, folks have utilized their experience and relationship with their organization as a jumping off point for some of their scholarly concentration projects as well. And again, you really work closely with your advisor, your source advisor, and perhaps even your academic advisor to see if it could meet your needs. I see another question in the chat. It says, for recruiting volunteers, do we need to promote the SSS in healthcare professional schools, or do we need to select from a given group? It's across all 3 schools. So that's one of the highlights, actually, I think, of the Service Scholar program is that you have an opportunity to meet students across the 3 schools. And we help you with that. We have our Scoop, which is our weekly newsletter, which is where we help cross-promote. And so we rely on our scholar to develop sort of the volunteer blurb. We encourage each other to, announce these in our classes and our different communication channels. So recruiting volunteers will promote, it is focused on the 3 professional schools. Yep, good question. Currently, MHS in social factors and health program needs 600 hours of research placement, which can be divided among different places, which would these, so it depends on what's required for research placement. These projects don't have a dedicated research. It depends on what's the definition of research for your program. These projects are not research-based projects. They might have research components, So again, I'd need to know a little bit more about what's required. What are the criteria for a research placement? I mean, if it's a literature review, if you're doing a literature review as a component of your project, then I would say yes, potentially those hours that you work on the literature review for your organization could be. But yeah, I would need a little bit more information about how your program defines research placement. Again, to do any of the crosswalking with what's required for your 600 hours. Amanda, thanks for the question. It's a good one. Any other questions before I move on? All right. All right, student application tips. One, read carefully through the CBO descriptions. You'll see it's kind of a range. We do have some of our partners and preceptors that have a lot of detail, like this is a project that they really would like advanced, a project idea, and have thought it through. And then there's some that are a little bit more broad. We really still want to work together and see what the assets of our scholars will be and are a little bit more open to that. And that's why there's that flexibility piece, but we need the project to be the anchor. So really look carefully through that and pause and see, oh, what kind of excites you about two of the projects, because you really can only select up to 2 projects in your application, a first choice and a second choice. Make sure to market your skills and previous work experience that illustrate that you're a good candidate for the specific project. Not only the specific project, but look up the organization on our source website. Look at their website, see what they do as well. And if you've had some experience or special interest, highlight that in your application. I will say that last year, I'm not exactly sure how to approach this. I think I could sense that folks used AI for some of their responses. And I would say I would discourage you and or if you utilize it, to make sure that you update it and have some specifics that speak to your unique experiences, your unique situations, tasks, actions, results that you have generated. Something that's personalized is going to make an impression. We know you all have access to the just the job descriptions and things like that. So saying that you can do the job descriptions or repeating some of those things are great, but we're really looking for something that's personalized. So that's, I'm going to pause there and just say that that's something that I noticed last year. Again, I already mentioned the eligibility about full-time students registered for courses throughout the 9 months. And that typically our students are located in the greater Baltimore area, because if you're reading the project's description specifically, they do require either full in-person or hybrid work. So there is some requirement to have Baltimore-based time, really, and that's, you know, the strength of source. And then typically during Baltimore business hours. Not to say that, is particularly for some of your hybrid content of the work, you know, if you're, you know, during breaks, you're not required to work during breaks, but you might be logging in during breaks, just to be sensitive to the times of the business hours that our organizations are working as well. All right, so that's some tips. This is the timeline. The application timeline deadline is in about 10 days, Sunday, June 23rd, so midnight is when our applications will close. I will say that last year, we were fielding 7 projects. We had about 60 applicants for 7 projects. So this is a very competitive program. It's across all 3 schools, which is also unique. Take some time and try to get your applications in by the deadline. Our internal review team will review and then narrow the applications down to the top candidates, 3, sometimes 4, typically 3 students, and whose names and materials will forward to our community partners. So we mentioned about the ranking. If you are really dedicated to 1 or 2, definitely put them in. If you really would only think that you could have an interest in 1, you don't have to put a second one down. It just depends on your preference. So applicants might have up to 2 interviews if you happen to put down 2. But again, you will not know. We only will know in the review. Your application responses, you'll have 2 different responses for each of the projects that you are indicating interest for. So after we send the names out, so the first phase is the application phase, second phase, interviews. So again, we'll submit our interviews. Students will be required to contact the organizations directly, and they will be anticipating you contacting them and scheduling an interview. So again, this is a little bit of we're putting the ball in your court. What are you, a self-starter, self-initiator? But our preceptors know that they are putting blocks of time between July 9th and the 22nd to do these interviews. So they're anticipating folks contacting them, interview candidates contacting them. And then everyone will need to complete all of the interviews by July 22nd. So that last moment would be everyone would submit their rankings, 1 or 2. And again, if you are fortunate and want to, then you can rank yes or no or not continuing. This is a fit question after the interview. Maybe after the interview, you heard something that kind of, it wasn't what you thought it was going to be. That's totally fine. You can tell us. You can submit and say, oh, I'm only interested in 1 of the organizations, not so much interested in the second project. And vice versa. The organizations can also let us know, we've given you 3 to 4 names. They can rank. They can rank everyone, or they can rank 2 or 3 or however many number of folks that they go through after their interview. And then finally, once we have those rankings at the end of July, we will be conducting the final matching. The finalists will be contacted. We'll have up to 5 business days to accept. And then please agree to participate in the final summer session, which is August 31st. Again, that's when you'll resume, joining the other 5 folks and meet as a cohort for the first time. So that's the process right now. All right, so I'm going to pause there. And again, another opportunity for folks to type in questions into the chat or anything about the program, projects, the timeline. Yes, sorry. In the DRPH part-time program. Unfortunately, DRP part-time program is not, you have to be a full-time student for this program. But please reach out to the source@jhu.edu website and just identify yourself, because there's lots of other ways to match part-time students to different opportunities. So just because you're not eligible for this program, we're staff happy to talk to you about what might fit your needs. All right. Oops, we're getting a lot of questions. Let me open up my chat a little bit more, but thanks for the question. What specific days of the week do the meetings and volunteer activities usually take place? So I could say for the program, our Source Service Academy sessions are Wednesdays and Wednesday evenings, and those are fairly set. I will say that volunteering activities, so that's part of co-designing the work plan with your organization and with your preceptor. And so that's one of the reasons it might be a good opportunity to look at the organization's website. Maybe they have business hours that can help you understand when they typically do work. If you make it through the interview process, you can ask, oh, when does this collaboration typically work? But we really rely on, again, this is why this role is as a program manager. You do a lot of planning and program project expectation setting in the beginning and really developing that rapport and communication ways, because your schedule is changing. And of course, the time that they can commit to you precepting you all will be set aside as well. And you can create that together. International students eligible to apply. Yes, that's one of our FAQs that we'll move into. Yes, international students are eligible as long as you're a full-time student. Got it. Wondering how rigorous is the program? More so, how much time is spent working for each project? Minimally, 150 hours over the course of about 9 months. So that's 3 to 5 hours a week. So we really ask you to consider, and it's definitely one of the questions in the application about your time commitment, other perhaps other time projects, employment organizations that you might have. And so I would say this is one of our more rigorous programs, but it depends on time management skills, how much time is spent working for each project. Again, the minimum is 150 hours. Now, there may be times that, especially during, like if you're planning an event, where some weeks you might only do 1 to 2 hours, and other weeks you might be doing, 7 to 8 hours. And so again, a lot of this relies on your capacity to develop professional communication skills with your preceptors, to talk about and being honest about your time. Are full-time PhD students eligible? In the nursing school and the in the public health school, yes. In the medical school, if you are a PhD student, you would need to be an MD PhD student. So you need to be have a medical student status, MS status as well. Good question. Also saw that the program can be applied to MPH practicum. How does that work? We work closely with the practicum office. You'll still need to fill out some of the paperwork for a practicum and enroll in a source credits, course credits, but you can decide when that is, since this isn't over the entire academic year. So you can utilize them for MPH credits. Yeah. All right. All great questions. All right, and hopefully more questions might come up as we go through these frequently asked questions. All right, great. So how and when is the stipend distributed? I think I answered that earlier, but yes, typically 2 installments. The goal is to, after you cross the midway point, 75 hours, and typically that happens December, January, and then again at the end, 150 hours, and that would be at the conclusion of the program, May to June. And so, but to receive these stipends on time, again, you need to confirm that you are completing all your program assignments, you're updating the hours that you're logging, and that you're fulfilling all of those scholar commitments that we have. And so we're all working together to, we have different accountability and milestones that we're also helping you. We want you to succeed, both from the source office advisor perspective, of course, as well as the partner preceptors. Okay, can I continue as a scholar after the academic year ends? So the duration is 1 full academic year. Many of our scholars go on to continue collaborating, volunteering, working with the organization, but beyond the scholar year, that's your independent work. And so, but the formal partnership, really, that's one of the things that we commit to our partners is that the project has a beginning and a middle and an end. If you choose to, again, continue working, advising with them afterwards, that's fine. That could be part of your sustainability plan with your partners, but that's not required. And really, we will conclude at the end of the academic year, May, June. All right, when will I be assigned a source staff advisor and how often will I have to meet with my advisor? So advisors will be assigned at the end of the summer, beginning of fall, after all of your preparation assignments are completed, and you'll meet quarterly with the advisor, minimally. I mean, we're always available. We're very approachable at any time, but you'll be meeting with us during the monthly, the entire cohort monthly, but we're accessible to you, but really quarterly is what I would say. Okay, so do I have to attend all of the sessions? Yes, we want you to attend the sessions. That's when you get to talk to other service scholars and find out about their experiences, compare, contrast, really have the deep reflection about what you're learning about Baltimore, what you're maybe learning about yourself and your own career path. But we understand that you don't know what your classes are, and sometimes there'll be conflicts. And so, you know, that is totally fine. It makes sense, but please clearly communicate that with us. If you know that you have a class conflict, let us know. We can give you the makeup assignments beforehand, or schedule the makeup time with us in advance. But of course, if there's an emergency, you know, make sure that you call, email us. We're flexible. So that flexibility piece is not just for scholars and for preceptors, but you know, for us as well. And we'll be flexible with you. Next question, is the community outreach program in the nursing school the same as SSS? They are separate, actually. So the community outreach program at the School of Nursing, they're different programs. They're both, the similarities is that they're both year-long experiences and work with our Baltimore nonprofits. And so the difference is the community outreach program is really working with existing programs in those organizations. It's not necessarily a project-specific goals. And so typically their hours and the COP, I believe, is paid, or at least their hours are weekly. So they're set a little bit more in line with existing infrastructure of the organization and not it's, I would say it has a little bit more structure to it because you need to show up at certain times to do on-site work versus our SSS program. The structure is there for you to collaborate specifically with your preceptor. So you may be doing, you know, you'll schedule time to be on site with them, with the staff, with clients, but you may also be doing work off site as well. So that's what the main difference is. Can I enroll in any project later in the year? None of these projects. So we have other programs that will open up throughout the year, but these enrolling in the project as the lead, as a service scholar, happens now. If you see folks, let's say the applicants, you aren't selected to be the lead on the project. You can certainly volunteer on the project because it's something, a passion of yours. Let's say the project topic is something you're very interested in. You could always volunteer, but the project managers and the service scholar role is what you're applying for now. You can enroll as a volunteer with those projects later in the year. Other programs at Source, Baltimore Action Project, Baltimore Community Practicum course, you can apply to those later on in the year. And they won't be these projects, but they'll be similar in spirit to these projects. Would you recommend this program for a first-year MSPH student? Have you had? Yes, we have had first-year MSPH students for sure. And actually, it's interesting. I've been with Source for about 2.5 years. I would say my first full cohort last year was a number of MPH students who utilized it for their MPH practicum, but this year we actually had a number of MSPH students in their first year. It can make sense. Great. Any other questions coming up for folks? All right. I'm going to move along. I just have these four. Can I choose my own CBO? Not for the SSS program. Again, we are committed to the priorities of our partners, and that's why we are providing you. And so you know that these projects are projects that are in line and a priority for them, so that the reciprocity really begins with them. So, they've taken the time to submit their proposals. They were selected to be in the program. So really, you don't choose your own CBO and say, hey, can I use this for SSS? That's not the infrastructure for this work. Do I have to have a reference? On the application, you will see towards the end, we'll ask you to list a reference. We will only contact that reference if you move to the interview phase. We will not contact that reference if you do not move to the interview phase. We ask you to enter it in just because we have a really quick turnover. Basically, interviewees, folks that are invited, are asked to schedule very quickly, and we want to gather that information from your references so we can share that out to our CBO partners as quickly as possible so that they can include your references in their consideration. So that's one of the reasons why we are trying to get ahead of that and not have any delays in communication. Again, I mentioned the program is competitive, and so it helps our community partners, the interviewers, understand your previous work experiences a little bit more deeply than what you may be expressing in your application materials. Why do we have two preceptors? We have two preceptors because it's important to have, as you can see, it's really robust, these projects. It's important that our scholars have support and that more than one person at the organization is aware of the work that you're doing so that, that person can go on vacation and you still have a contact. Or it's not uncommon for nonprofits to have turnover and staff change. And so we wouldn't want the work that you do in collaboration with one person to hinge on that one person. And that's why we require two preceptors as well. And it's also wonderful. We strongly encourage our scholars to not only develop relationships with their preceptors, but lots of folks throughout the organization. Okay, here's the question that has come up a couple of times. Can international students apply? Yes. However, we strongly discourage students, international students, or otherwise to travel extensively for maybe not only international students going home, but for internships or academic or research opportunities. It depends, and we're not saying don't go, but it may, it requires a lot to be able to, if you know when you're going to be away, and again, if it happens during a break, our preceptors know that. We share the academic school year calendars with our preceptors, so they know when you might be away for breaks. But this really doesn't work if you are away for a lot of the time. And so if you anticipate going home for big chunks, it might not be the best fit. We've had students where they didn't realize X, Y, or Z might be happening. They couldn't come back to Baltimore. I mean, we've been able to adapt again and be flexible. But it really requires a lot of high-level communication so that we can make sure to bridge any gaps if you do plan to be overseas for a component of the time. That we are as transparent with our partners and with your advisors as possible. Because again, Baltimore-based opportunity. So this is an opportunity for international students, if you're here, to build community in Baltimore and get to know the city and our people better. And then do the 4 volunteers, oops, sorry, have to be from the health professional schools? Yes. And then your advisor and our team here at Source provide support for recruitment. We have had some challenges in the past, and so we're always trying to figure out best ways. But the role really requires you to be a little bit of a self-initiator, self-starter too, and to be creative. And as a student in Hopkins, there's lots of ways to try to get your peers and your colleagues to sort of join in on really interesting projects. The volunteerism can be one time or it can be ongoing. So we've had scholars that have had different strategies. They want to get volunteers on early so they can be part of the creation and the co-design process. But some projects demand like, oh, I know I'm going to have events. And so really, I'm just interested in having volunteers for one-time commitments. And that's both of those examples are acceptable as well. But part of our commitment to our partners is that they're not only getting you as a service scholar and your hours, but also that you're working to promote and advocate activities and their mission and vision, so that you really become a part of their team in a special way. All right, I'm looking at the time. We have about 5 minutes left. How are folks feeling? Do you feel like you have a deeper understanding of the project and the programs and what's expected of the scholars and of the application process? And are there any questions? And if you do have questions, do not hesitate to contact us here. Oops, went the wrong direction. Okay, again, I'll just end by saying that the application again is due Sunday, June 23rd. If you have questions, feel free to email source@jhu.edu. Our team reviews the inbox, and so we'll get the answers to any follow-up questions to you as soon as possible. If you've registered for this, if you've got to the end, you will be receiving the link to view this, and then also a copy of the slides and a copy. One last thing, which I guess I should have said it earlier. If you're interested in seeing the questions, you will get a preview of the questions. So I'd encourage you not to open up an application and submit a dummy application just because you're interested in seeing the questions. We're happy to share those questions with you as well. And again, we're very excited to see your applications, learn about your unique experiences, what you think about what our Source Service Scholar program might provide you during your time with Hopkins next year. All right. I think that might be it. We can stop the recording.